Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of your mammoth mystery.
Megaliths, yeah, mystery
megalith.
megaliths. God, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you haven't already, I suggest you go and listen to part 1 before you tune into this bit. Because I don't really know how to do a recap. I'll do a very basic recap.
There's just strange stuff everywhere around the world that some archaeologists and scientists haven't bothered to carbon date.
Currently, basically, history is saying they're one date, and this guy Graham, who is done a documentary about it, a Netflix documentary, is suggesting that the historians have got it wrong, and were built much earlier, and were actually built by people before the end of the last ice age, which would support a lost ancient civilization.
And what is that Netflix documentary again?
It's called Ancient Apocalypse. Okay, so like I said, I suggest you go and listen to the first episode to get the full bit, otherwise you're going to be playing a little bit of catch up here and you might struggle a little bit. But also, I'm not going to lie, the first episode's quite long, and I don't think this one's going to be much shorter, I'm not going to lie. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. And also, if you have just tuned in and you decide you're not going to listen to the first episode, we were recommended this one by one of our listeners, Ebes. So thank you for this. And if you really hate, you can blame Ebes.
That's not very nice.
No, it's not very nice. Hopefully you do enjoy it. I'm hoping I'm doing it justice after all this time, because I genuinely did watch the documentary and it's like, oh yeah, this is really good, this is really interesting. And then I came to write it and I found it really difficult to write because I don't like doing lots of writing.
That's probably why it was a series of 8 episodes.
Yeah, originally it was 8 episodes, but I didn't know how we were going to do that in this. I thought at first I could make all my notes and then sort of just mention the important bits, but as I started writing, it's like, no, I need to include that bit for later, and I couldn't cut bits out. So I've done that within reason. So if you want to, you can go and check the documentary out if you haven't already. Maybe if you already have, you might know roughly what I'm on about anyway. So
okay, so tell me more.
Okay, so as we ended last time, we'd been to the Bimini Road, and now they travel to Turkey, so just a little bit away. So the next megalith is Göbekli Tepe, and structurally is much more advanced than the other ones that we've seen so far, and it's believed to be around 11,600 years old, which is right at the end of the last ice age. So historians are saying we've literally just come out of an ice age and they're about to build the most advanced structure we've seen yet out of the other ones that we've seen so far.
Well, you know,
not impossible.
When you nail something first time.
Yeah,
it's just that.
It's supposed to be this.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've come out of an ice age, you're still shaking after the fact. I don't know, you've lost all your family members and half the earth is now under the sea. But you're so shaken up about it, you build the most magnificent structure you've ever seen.
Well, that's usually when the best things happen, when you're depressed.
I mean, to be fair, when you look at how we stress worked, I was quite impressive under pressure.
See? Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's why I need just a good scare and I can get on with more. I'm not recommending it, it's very stressful.
No,
and it winds you down.
Yep.
Okay. So it's built on the side of a hill. Okay. And is made up of 4 circular enclosures with T-shaped megaliths in the middle of each enclosure. So I say enclosure, it's sort of
like a zoo?
No, it's more, it hasn't got a roof.
Okay.
But they're like different circular enclosures all built together, and there's connections between each one. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I'm
so
going
it's
to
all
look it up.
Walls.
Yep.
Okay, and this one's been built into the side of the hill, so it's slightly altered over the thousands of years, because Earth is slightly shifted and things will have grown in it, like it will have filled with mud and sand, and bits of it will have been lost, and part of it's underground.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and then these T-shaped megaliths, so basically it's like one upright one with another one laying across the top. Okay, and the smaller pillars, the smaller pillars have carvings of animals on them. Is this the one that's got the phallus shaped? I can't remember if it is. There's one that's got phallus shaped things in it. It might be the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, so, these T-shaped megaliths, so basically it's one upright pillar with other little ones laying across the top to literally make a T-shape.
Yeah.
And they have carved into it, they have little depictions of animals, which some obviously is sort of traditionally linked with ancient Greeks, like hieroglyphics sort of thing. Some are saying it's much earlier and linked with things with stars and astrology, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've given each enclosure a different letter. So enclosure D dates back to around 11,600 years ago. However, enclosure A, which they believe is the latest one to have been built, dates around to 10,500 years ago. So nearly 1,000 years difference. So like those other pyramids have been added to over time.
Yeah.
Okay. Interestingly, each time they've added an enclosure, the orientation was slightly different in terms of the entrances, like that other one that we looked at before, in order to follow a star.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to, it's not been proven, but you could say, are they building them for a specific reason? Could that reason be a certain star that they're trying to track? And it's changed over certain times due to precession. Okay. So enclosure D is the largest and most intricate. So maybe Graham's thrown out there that was the first one built, and the others have been added. So in 2003, radar discovered 20 stone enclosures inside the hill with more than 200 pillars, but most of it is unexcavated, so it's not even been looked at. So there's more to it than what we currently know. Could some of those be even older than enclosure D? Is what Graham's putting forward, because they're more buried. So it could have been built inside afterwards. They've added to it after someone's come later, gone into enclosure D, and then built more inside. Or if you want to go like the other pyramids, those inner ones were built first, and the other ones were added to it afterwards. If those ones are older than enclosure D, obviously enclosure D is 11,600 years ago, which was the end of the last ice age. So if you want to believe the inside ones are even older, that means they would have had to been built before the end of the last ice age, supporting Graham's theory of an advanced lost civilization. But of course it's not been excavated, so we don't know.
Yes, looking at this picture, it says that it's also looking at Sirius for a constellation,
which links back to the other one. So again, more links with the others. So then they move on to somewhere called Karahan Tepe. It's similar to the other one, except for the fact that one side is carved out of the bedrock. So rather than it having been built in sort of an open area, one side of it is carved straight into the bedrock, and then so it's almost like they've used one side is natural and the other three sides are man-made, if that makes sense. So they've almost used the earth to help them build it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like there's a podium or seating area, and the symbols depict robed figures. So rather than animals this time, it's robed figures. So some could say this might be rituals or worships of a certain person, which I don't think is too far-fetched. Then within one of the chambers is 10 phallus-shaped pillars, and on the 11th, then there's an 11th one, which is a freestanding pillar carved out of the bedrock. So this is again out of the original earth. Which leads to a snaked chambered passage. Now, when it said that, I was like, does it mean snakes? It's not. It's basically, it winds a little bit. So some people are saying it's snaking. Okay. So is this symbolism? I'm thinking Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
You've got phallus.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve's tempted by the naughty snake, which goes up into another chamber and then end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Okay. It also then leads to that snake chamber leads to a large carved out dominating head. Could that symbolise God or a god? So Eve's been naughty, she's been tempted by the naughty snake.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking at all the... Now she's got
to face God.
I'm looking at all the symbols on them. Kind of look like gargoyles as well.
Yeah. There's a whole mixture, which is why they're saying they think some have been added later on.
Yeah.
As like things have been interpreted, or is a lot of it a lot earlier and it means something completely different. We don't know is the answer.
Yeah.
Parts of it have been looked at, and parts of it like, it looks quite similar to this, so we're going to say it was created by this person, but they've not actually looked. It just looks similar, so they've said it is, without actually excavating it. So it's a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously only one chamber's been excavated, but radar reveals that there is in fact 20. However, the rest of those haven't been excavated, so we don't know what time they were created, basically.
Yeah.
And then he speaks to... He's a historian, but I think he's also done a bit of work on astrology, so he's one of those rare ones that's quite happy to mix in between the two different sciences.
I think you need that to like understand
everything.
Yeah.
Or at
you
least
can't
be
just be like
open to other people's interpretations.
Exactly.
A lot of them, yes, they do contradict each other.
Mm.
But there's also aspects that could help build a different story.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, like I said, I'm not saying that Graham's wrong in any of this, and I'm also not saying that the other people are stupid for not checking it. But I think there's a lot of everyone believes in what they believe in, and they don't want to share it or change, because it dramatically changes what they originally believed, and it kind of shits on their own work.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of them just aren't willing to do it.
No.
So he basically looked at one of those stones that does have carvings in it, and it's known as the vulture stone.
Yes, I was seeing that. It looks exactly like a vulture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there's also within it, there's other symbols. He broke it down. There's other little bits in between, and I don't want to just say squiggly lines, because they obviously have far more significance than that. And he was suggesting it could possibly represent a date and a star, okay? Because a lot of the little figures further on them have correlations with animals that you would find in constellations.
Yeah.
So he's saying, is it a date stamp?
Maybe, because then you've kind of got like a little scorpion below the vulture one. And then it kind of looks like a smaller vulture, but I'm not sure. Could be.
So he's effectively saying, based on a star, like it's a date stamp, like we maybe saw this star or this constellation on this day.
Yeah, because the vulture looks like it's holding something circled. That could be the star. That could be a sun. Don't know. Interesting.
So could that represent winter solstice, summer solstice?
Could do.
So this is what this guy was putting forward, that's what it could literally be a date stamp. And the reason why these pillars are in certain places and in different temples is because it's following a specific star.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty valid. I don't think there's anything wrong in that, but officially in the history records, they're not recognising it.
There's one on a different pillar that looks like kind of like a crocodile.
Well, some of them they couldn't, and this is why historians won't approve it, because they're saying that works for that idea, but the other one we don't know what it is, so it doesn't work. It must mean something else.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to figure out, maybe they just missed one, maybe there's a star they haven't figured out yet, and it has a different meaning for another animal, or maybe some of them have dual reasons.
Yes. Hold on, I'm like in a rabbit hole now. There's like a dinosaur on it. It doesn't mean it's on that one, but never mind. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, there's a whole, each of the pillars has something slightly different on it. So I'm going to go with, if you want to believe like those other temples, they were built and constructed and carved at certain times depending on what star they were following. So that again would go back to the whole, there's an ancient advanced civilization, because they have enough to understand precession and the change in orientation of stars, and that they're able to follow and track it.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't, the hunter-gatherers that have just come out of the Ice Age are not doing that, I don't think. It points to a more advanced civilization, basically, is where I'm going with that. Once I then looked at this vulture stone, before I go on to the next part, I want to talk to you a little bit about something called the Younger Dryas, which was a major event.
The Younger Dryas.
Or Dryas.
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 You've got a Dryas?
We're so very mature. Yeah, because it's going to crop up quite a bit in this next bit, and I kind of want to explain it now rather than having to go back over and keep explaining myself.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about this. It was a major event in history. So it started 12,800 years ago and ended 11,600 years ago. So
that's a long time to have a Dryas.
Yeah, Dryas. Oh, it is. So obviously it coincides with the last Ice Age.
Okay.
So it's linked with sort of like a tremendous geological upheaval, is how they sort of describe it in this program. It's basically immense flooding followed by 1,000 years of freezing temperatures, which obviously changed the earth, and it's when things like saber-toothed tigers and mammoths went extinct. Okay, so it's a massive change. It's not like just a bit of a storm. It's like everything massive change, a bit like a melting of the ice caps sort of thing.
Wait, hold on a minute. I thought Cleopatra was around when mammoths were still around, which in my head is not logical. But I thought that was...
Well, maybe in this lost civilization, maybe she was.
Because when I read that, I was just like, hold up a minute.
You sure you're not just thinking of like hairy elephants?
I'm very tired. I don't know. I'm sure, because I read that and I was just like, that can't be.
No, because like the saber-toothed
tigers. To be fair,
I'm thinking, you know, Ice Age.
Yes, I know. But to be fair, I did just read it online, so therefore
you
can say anything, and I'll be like, oh, really?
But yeah, So 11,600 years ago, the freeze ended, which then obviously caused another immense flooding, causing the sea levels to rise, which is where...
You're thinking Noah.
Yeah, well, that's where a lot of the stories, the
said
whole
Noah
Noah
and
and
the
the
whale.
Ark...
Noah and the whale.
Noah and the whale. Obviously, a lot of these stories then follow in the next sort of 1,000 years afterwards. People start bringing... This is where religion starts coming in. And at the moment, they're saying that's because we started civilization after 11,600 years ago, so we started writing about it. What if it wasn't? What if we were around... This is where Graham's going with it. What if we were around before this catastrophic event happened? Those that survived then start recording things better or in an alternative way.
Okay. We should have had lunch before we recorded this so I
Yeah,
can
I think
concentrate.
so.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is basically what's going to go into in the second half of it, which is why I wanted to explain the younger...
Dry ass.
And now I keep going to say dry ass, but
Dry
yes,
ass.
dry ass.
Dry ass.
Okay, so obviously as that
Dry
ice
ass.
melts, I was going to say smells. The ice might smell. As the ice melts, the sea levels dramatically rise, which would explain...
does that happen? Oh, no. Of
So,
course.
whereas before, when they were mentioning the Ice Age, do you remember it was near the beginning of the last episode, I mentioned about, they were saying about a big freeze, but obviously that shouldn't cause the sea levels to rise because the temperatures are too cold.
Yeah.
What he's saying is there's another catastrophic event at the end of the Ice Age where obviously they start melting the ice, and that's what increases the sea levels to rise, and therefore a lot of these structures, if they have survived, half of them are now underwater. Okay, and obviously
I'm nodding, yes.
islands, what is now islands weren't islands before, but they become islands in this catastrophic event because the water on a mass scale starts flooding everywhere.
I get you.
Okay. Obviously, if that happened, that would have rapidly buried a lot of these megaliths that we've already looked at. Some of them, it might not have completely destroyed them or immersed them, but those, where some of it, where part of it's underwater, they've obviously not been too badly affected, but others we might not know about because they have been completely consumed by water and we haven't discovered them yet because we haven't gone that far. I don't know where that bit's come from. This is what my notes make sense. I think there was supposed to be another subhead in there where he starts talking and they go to a place because I've just put man-made hill.
Man-made hill. The hill is man-made. Grace.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't tell me where it is. And all I've written is about an abandoned, destroyed enclosure, like it's a man-made hill. And I think it's him at the beginning of the episode, like he's doing the captions of what's about to come in the thing. I remember this now. Right, anyone that does this, that takes notes when they're watching a program, will know exactly what I've done. It's like, not a recap, but it's like, at the beginning of the episode when they're going to go, in this episode, and start scrolling. And then
you're like,
okay, this is where it doesn't make sense. So this is exactly what I've done here, which is why I later highlighted the bottom bit, because this is where it starts from.
Okay.
I told you I was going to fuck this. Let's pick up. Pick up? Oh my god, Natasha. I'm losing it. We've still got a way to go. Right, okay. So for this one, the rest of this is all pretty much in America. The next points that he visits. And he's already done previous work on America's lost civilization. So that's where he brings this in and links it at the end with all these other ones that he's discovered in his earlier episodes, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to look at these ones. And these ones that he mentions here basically obviously follow a similar pattern as you're about to discover, but these ones are specific to America. So this first one that we go to is a place called Poverty Point. Now, it gets its name because there used to be, on that spot, a plantation. And obviously you get things like slaves and obviously, slave labour. So now it's known as Plantation Point, but he's going to go back and say it was actually around far earlier than that. So it's obviously... At the moment, historians think it's a man-made hill, and it's not. It's 50 miles west of the Mississippi River, and it was... Historians have listed it on the site as a scenic hill. Okay, so they built it man-made, they put all the mud together and made a nice big hill so you can see far away.
Okay.
So... They've just labelled these hills as mounds. So there's several ones in this area.
Is this a Native American burial site?
There were some people have made some links to where some of them are. But as you're going to go in, I think it might be possibly another type of these megaliths that's eventually got covered with earth, sort of.
Okay.
Okay. So these immense man-made structures, there's the first one is known as Mound A, and it contains both human figures, like printed into little artifacts. So at some point, people have lived there because of, based on the artifacts that are there. So when at the top it's a pretty flat horizon, and you can see 360 degrees around you. So when you stand at the top, you can look all the way around you and see everywhere. It's obviously it's not believed to be a defensive structure because there isn't like any walls or anything. It's literally like, effectively it's a mound.
Yeah. So
defensively, other than the fact your attackers are going to be pretty out of breath by the time they reach you at the top, it serves nothing as a defence. If it is, it's a pretty useless one.
But if someone's running up, you just run down.
Yeah, but you're more likely to trip if you when you go down.
You're just quicker on the way down then.
Roll down. I'm thinking cheese rolling.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's believed that it originally stood at 100 feet, and at one point of it has a 43-acre plaza on it. So it's got 6 concentric ridges, each as tall as 6 foot, and are levelled off at the top, creating a half circle with a diameter of 3/4 of a mile. So this thing is massive. So basically it's lots of like little semicircles on a platform, and it's broken up into a series of aisles, and to me it reminded me of an amphitheatre.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically what it looks like, but it just looks like mounds of earth because it's basically got grass on the top of it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the stone underneath and it's more man-made, or even if it is out of earth, they've man-made, like they've structured it that way. So scattered nearby are 6 other massive man-made mounds labelled A to F. Okay. So it's one of the largest structures in America and dates back to, well, at the moment, 3,700 years ago, long before livestock was kept on the site. So, but also I don't see, when I was looking at it, I don't see how it was supposed to keep livestock in. The historians were saying it was in all these little lots because you would have had different livestock in each area and it would have enclosed them in, but when I looked at it, I don't really see how. I'll be honest. I was a bit, not that it's far-fetched, but I didn't really see it as being effective.
They're trying to find a purpose for it, and you're not seeing it. Okay.
Yeah. So some were saying, if you want to go back to the whole amphitheatre look, could you say it's ceremonial performance, like they would have gathered people around to, I don't know, whether it's sharing a story or something ritual or religious.
Yeah.
Would that be a meeting area? And because you could meet a vast amount of people there. I mean, I know they're not going to have like a megaphone, you stand in the middle and you shout it out, but could everyone be there to see something? So it would explain, like, you'd be able to have a mass of people there, wouldn't you, based on the size?
Yeah.
So at the moment, there is no documents to survive to tell us exactly what its purpose was. So, we don't know. So, south from Poverty Point is Lower Jackson Mound, which dates back much further to 3,500 BC. The flat horizon around it allows you to observe the rising and the setting of the sun and the moon. So you can see where it's going to go in terms of linking this with the other ones. And because it's got the amphitheatre and the little ruts in, like, it will hit at certain points. So yeah, if you stand at the eastern edge of the oval space at the heart of the plaza, the summer solstice falls directly in line with Mound B, the oldest mound. Okay. If you stand from the same vantage point in the winter solstice, falls directly behind Mound E. So this is now starting to suggest that each mound is built based on the type of solstice.
Yeah,
right?
I see.
Move to the western edge and the same inner oval, and the sun rises directly over Mound C. Winter solstice, the sun rises directly over Mound D. Okay, so if you gaze directly west through the centre of the plaza on either spring or fall equinox, then the sun appears to roll down the northern edge of Mound A. Okay, so again, still linked to the stars. So Graham is saying that it's clearly created to track the stars and things in the sky.
So it's a calendar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, which I think is plausible. Historians will say no.
No.
Well, that's what he's basically said in basic terms in this thing. They're like, no.
They're like, yeah, they're just like, no, we did thingy, and then he's just like, no, they said no.
Okay. So yeah, so if you read other things, like I said, the amphitheatre, like when I first said it does sound like it could be a big gathering for places, but then again, like I said, it fits in nicely with the camera. Maybe it had a dual purpose. You know, like now how we change theatres and we use them for different things other than pantomimes. Maybe that's what they were doing then. They give it a dual purpose. Do you know what I mean? But like now, or like churches, they're converting them so people can do, like, it's not just for weddings and funerals. Maybe that was their version then. They've just made everything dual purpose. So it's like tracking the stars, it's a calendar, but also, you know, we can put on a show.
Possibly, maybe that's when they have to do a certain play to appease the gods. It's not always sacrificing things.
Or it could just be pure entertainment, for all we know.
Maybe the moon is at the perfect angle for a spotlight.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
See, we've solved it.
This chair's very noisy. Hold on, let me move.
Okay, so then at one part of it, archaeologists found a large circle with holes in it, like into the ground, that were not massively deep, but sort of deep, like they were noticeable. And so the archaeologists suggested they might have had stones inside them stood upright, similar to henges, so like Stonehenge that you would find in England. There was another one that had some left. There was 40 wood henges, bloody hell, at Poverty Point at one of theirs. So could it be that one time they shifted from using wooden ones to stone ones?
Stone lasts
longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously some of these it was like fossilised into the ground, so that's how they knew it was there. But effectively it aids the same thing. So multiple were built over different times and in slightly different positions, like in Malta. So again, are they following a certain star? Or if you want to look at it, depending on how many pillars there was it like a clock, a way of telling the time? Because it was in like a circular shape, and like and that's how it was. So like, would it be like times of the day?
Maybe.
So yeah, it could be a combination of you. So there could be tracking stars and a clock at the same time. So you don't know. So then we move on to the next part, and 600 miles north of Poverty Point in Ohio, perched on top of a densely forested ridge, stands a shape in the form of a living creature. That living creature being a 400-metre long snake. So this area is known as Serpent Mound. So again, people are like, it's just a mound, like a load of earth that they've all put together and made a pretty animal out of it. To me, it seemed quite significant that it was a serpent, because I feel like that's a bit of a theme going on.
Yeah, it's not just going to naturally...
It's not naturally occurring, but out of all of the animals, this serpent seems to be one that's reoccurring for the time, so could it be significant?
Which is very annoying that Sirius is not the snake's constellation, because that would have been perfect.
So, starting from its coiled tail, there's 7 bends in its body, and it winds its way to the head, where its gaping jaws appear it's about to engulf a separate oval earthwork. So I'm guessing that'd be like its prey. So if you want to go, I don't know, a mouse or something.
Yeah.
So it could be that. So that's basically what they're saying. Like, it's like an architectural thing. Historians saying like it's like not a bit of fun, but it's reason there. It's like arty, if you like.
Yeah.
Okay. Serpent Mound extends more than a quarter of a mile from its jaws in the northwest to its tail on the southwestern corner of the hilltop. Originally, there was a circle of standing stones by its head, but we're not known why.
Was it a crown?
Well, no. I'm thinking going back to Poverty Point, they've got those circles with the stones. Could it be linked? So they used it on that specific point because it's tracking whatever they were tracking in the other place, maybe to see if it's different.
Maybe.
Okay. So I thought it was a good link back. So just behind the head are 2 decorative extensions, also unknown to the purpose. But the way I looked at it, it doesn't look that distinctively. But when you want to go back to the dragon episode and they predict them with horns, could it be something to do with what they used as a symbol back then, like what it symbolised? So it could have an important reason, it might not.
Is it on like the outside of the mound? So it's not like eyes?
It's like, it's not separate from it, but I don't know how to describe it. You know when they used to do old drawings, like it's not all together, it's not like they draw it on top of each other. You know, like now we'd use different colours to depict different parts. They do it slightly outside of it to depict a different thing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So rather than the arms and the legs being attached, it's slightly a little bit away from it, but it's like that's supposed to be an extra pointy bit hanging out of it or whatever.
Okay.
Obviously they didn't have different colours then, so Well, they did, but they just didn't know how to use them quite how we use them today. So, yeah, they couldn't do it on top of each other. So, obviously, the sign, we want to know who built it and why. So, the sign at the site will tell you that it was built around 1000 AD by indigenous people referred to as the forked ancient culture, but the truth is that no one actually knows how old this is. So that it could be indigenous, but they don't actually know. Okay, so they're claiming it is. Okay. The 1000 AD was based on only 2 samples of organic material taken from what may have been a reconstructed part, i.e. a bit that was built much later than the rest of it. So they haven't actually excavated the main thing.
Just a part of it.
Yeah, very much like all of these other ones. Okay. So because no other sample has been taken from another area, they can't really date it. However, one by someone that goes in as part of this documentary does date a bit back, and they date it back to 321 BC, which is obviously quite a bit earlier than the other one. Not as old as all these other ones we've done, but if that's just one other area, and it's still relatively near the surface, what about if there's more underneath?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So Graham couldn't reinvestigate or dig further because he was actually banned from Serpent Mound. And they do a little bit in the documentary where, like, he's obviously gone digging and he tries to say stuff, and they ban him from the thing and don't let him back in and said he can't do any more filming there. So he can't do any more investigation. So they banned him for his suggestion that the Serpent Mound design and the idea behind it goes back to a time obviously much earlier than 300 BC, more likely 10,000 years ago to the end of the last ice age, and that being that because it involves astronomy and the skies, and they're saying that basically the historians are going, it's all pants, your whole thing of linking it in with tracking the moon and the sun and the stars, so we've banned you from the place. That's what he said that they've said. And he claimed, I think he read out a bit of an email, but obviously you can't see it, so take it how you want to take it.
Yeah, I've just Googled it. My God, that does properly look like a snake. There's no way that's natural. Like that, the way that is, that's clearly man-made.
Yeah, but obviously they're contesting over when it was created. They're saying only 1000 AD, historians. Graham's arguing that it might be earlier. Okay. So, depending, this is then when Graham goes...
What would be the point of that? Sorry. What would be the point of that? That's strange.
Well, this is what he's saying. He thinks it does have a reason to link with the stars, and that's what I'm about to get onto.
Okay.
But the Americans obviously won't let him investigate, so this is his theory from the photos that he's been able to gather and the information that he was able to get before he was banned. So depending on the time of year, the jaws perfectly align with where the sun sets, so summer solstice. So it's like, as the jaws are open, that's where the sun...
Yeah.
Okay. But he's saying it also works as a compass. Now, serpents are renowned for their ability to change their skin, so plausible that they would be added to or reconstructed to over time if you want to go with that whole... That's what they believe in animals. Like, it sort of adds to the whole... That's why they picked that animal out of all of the animals.
Yeah.
And they're saying, is that why it's been linked with a lot of these things to do with the moon and stars? Obviously, things change over time, and obviously snakes typically... They, as symbols, they're depicted obviously with being able to change their skin. So that's where they're going with this theory.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the thing when he looked at it, even though what he's done is pretty much on mark with how the sun rises, it's ever so slightly off, which is why some of them won't credit. It's not like miles off that it's implausible, but it's different. But then I'm thinking, if the landscape's changed over many thousands of years, when it was originally built, did it sit perfectly?
Yeah, I just found a little picture that, like, you stand there, it matches up with the summer solstice, which you just said, and if you stand to the left of it, it is where the moon hits perfectly with
So this is what he's saying is depending on the time, but that fits in with astrology. But obviously that completely changes the meaning of what they've said, the historians have said it's for. So they're like, no, we're not having it.
It's very strange the way of, like, what. It's very interesting.
So obviously...
So I'm thinking, obviously it's Native American at this time. What's the significance of that to them? or the people before them.
But then if you look at these other megaliths, if they're tracking something,
Yeah.
could this be this particular one it's built? Is it built to track it? And the reason it's off slightly sometimes is because of precession.
Yeah. That would make sense.
And that's what he's saying. He thinks it's because of precession. So every now and then it slightly shifts and it's off. And that's why it's not perfectly in line. So then he gets in another astronomer, and they refer to something called the obliquity of the ecliptic. Okay?
Very good. That was very good.
I know, I nearly didn't get that out. Okay. Which is obviously
that
going
sounds
back
very
to the
interesting.
precession. Yeah, going back to precession, it's obviously we know the Earth is tilted on its axis. But that tilt is not fixed or constant.
No.
Okay, so going back to this obliquity of ecliptic, so it changes over a 41,000 year cycle, so a long period of time. It changes roughly 2.5 degrees over that cycle. Okay, so not a massive amount, but it's enough that it would affect the placements of things. So it effectively, the basic way to describe it is it nods back and forth. Which affects the rising and position of the sun on the summer solstice, which again would link back with the serpent why sometimes it doesn't perfectly align. Okay, meaning at one point they could have lined up perfectly, but when they went back and added it to precession and looked at when it did perfectly meet, the days were much earlier than when the historians are suggesting it's built, which added credit to Graham's theory of it was from an ancient civilization from before the end of the last ice age.
Okay.
So this adds to it. So if Graham's right, the Serpent Mound was exactly centered on the sun around 12,800 years ago, which was the very beginning of the Younger Dry Ice and before the end of the last ice age. Okay. So at the very peak of the ice age, around 20,000 years ago, much of North America was covered by an ice cap over a mile deep. And if you look if you look at Ohio's Serpent Mound at that time, it marks the furthest south that the North American ice sheet reached. So could it be a marker point? Okay. Giant ice cliffs rising just by this ridge, then followed by the Younger Dryas. Then Native Americans would have used the serpent to represent the Earth's changes, and it relates back to a legend of Aquarius, I think is how you say it. So basically that links back to all the Native Americans, and it's very similar in the sense that it brings in about the whole flooding, and it's almost another version of some of the other stories heard, so like the Batak people and oh my god, what were the other ones I mentioned in the last episode? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Maltese?
Yes. There was another one as well, but I can't remember it now off the top of my head. Oh, the Isis and the Horus one. That was the Maltese one, wasn't it? I think so.
Yes.
You'll have to go back and check the other episode, won't you? So yeah, so basically these again, it's another account of another version of the same story. So is it a case of that's been passed down? They've come into contact with someone, almost like a travelling, like they've done it and then they've interpreted it like how now we see different religions where it's basically the same story. It's just had extra bits added into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so but I thought it was quite interesting how it could have been like a marker from where these ice caps were. So almost like tracking like where it's going. You know, now we track the ice caps melting. Could that have been an ancient version of it?
Maybe.
But it also supports Graham's theory of them being much more advanced than simple hunter-gatherers. So then they move on to the next episode. So they then go back to Turkey for this. So 240 miles northwest of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which we mentioned in the last episode, is a hidden city.
Yeah.
Okay. It's currently unknown who constructed it, but it must have been motivated by fear. But of what fear is how he starts the episode. Okay. So this is Derinkinyu, and it looks like an unremarkable town. That was until 1963, when developers working on a house knocked through a floor which exposed a hidden tunnel. It led to a forgotten world, carved out of the bedrock. So the very core of It's obviously still external, but you're basically digging into actual Earth. Lying under the town is an entire mysterious subterranean complex, not one for claustrophobic people, unfortunately, because it's a series of very small tunnels. And basically this next part of it is going to go into civilizations that for some reason had to suddenly hide underground. And I think you can kind of guess where it's going to go if there's a massive flood. Where do you hide?
Yeah.
Possibly underground. Could this be how some of them have survived? Maybe.
Do you really want to be underground if there's a massive flood?
Yeah, but this is where then later as well it goes into the apocalyptic thing of there's also stars burning up bits of the earth.
I just don't imagine going underground is the safest bet if there's a flood.
But did they know that?
No. Probably not.
Or had they built it before for other reasons, and just so happens when these floods happen, they seal off whatever hole was at the top of the earth and then they hide away in these places. Like, I don't know, we might just weather it out or something. I don't know. It's a bit a hit or miss.
Yeah.
There's bits of it when you go on, you're a bit like, okay, that makes sense.
If it's in the ground but you happen to be on a hill, you're probably fine.
Yeah. So it's really hard to tell from when you want to go back to when Graham's was, like how high up this would have been in comparison to the water. Because at the moment it looks like a pretty flat area. But would it have been originally? I don't know.
Like sea level wise, yeah. Is this still, where are we now? I'm lost.
So Turkey.
God knows, I don't know.
Okay. So a series of stone tunnels and chambers going as deep as 85 metres obviously built in it. There's 18 levels of rooms and tunnels. So these are on top of each other. So the only way I can describe it is, when you see an ant farm, pressed against the glass, with all the different things, this is exactly what it looks like.
I quite like that. I'm tempted to have one, but I don't know how that would... Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Distracted.
So it basically looks like that. And at first I was thinking, yeah, but how do they breathe when they're under the lower ones? And it's okay because they're clever. They created a little chimney bit that pokes out the top that sits all down one side. So on either the levels,
they can breathe.
Let air into each one. So it's okay. You can breathe, Natasha.
Okay.
So basically, the entire thing has been hacked out of the bedrock, and is believed to have been done with simple hand axes. If you base it off what historians are saying, plausible, but I think you'd need a hell of a lot of people to do it. Do you not think?
Yeah.
I imagine with a little spoon, just.
Sorry, I was just imagining an ant farm.
An army of ants. Well, you would have needed an army of people to bloody do it, especially if you've got to do it quick. We've got a month to make this, mate. Come on, get on with it.
Maybe they were just kind of living under there anyway, and then they were like, well, I want to get to my neighbour, but I don't want to go outside.
Oh, so I just go through this little tunnel.
Yeah. So then maybe they kind of maybe there's a really soft bits and they're just kind of scratching at it. And then they're like, oh. And then,
hello, Barbara.
And then they keep, I don't know. It's strange.
Maybe. So they basically, it's a series of narrow tunnels that then open out into larger spaces. So what could be construed as rooms, if you like.
Yeah, cave.
Yeah. So it has been mapped, and a cross-section of the city spread in 4 square kilometres and has around 15,000 air ducts connecting to upper levels of the surface. So that's what allows you to breathe. There's 50 vertical shafts going right down to the water table. So right down to where the water level is. I'm being very mature about this, Natasha, for once.
Sorry.
What else do you want me to call it? It is a shaft.
It is a shaft. I was fine. I thought I was hiding behind the mic so you couldn't actually see.
Okay.
It is a shaft.
Okay. So also, Darren, Rinku also means deep well. So kind of appropriate for the place. So was it named after they built this and for this reason or not? It was sort of an offshot.
Well, maybe they built the shaft thing and then it rained and then they were like, oh, maybe they built that purpose to collect rainwater so they would have a little well down there.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
This
maybe.
might be the purpose of the shaft.
So obviously it's very complex and they estimated that it could shelter up to 20,000 people.
Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, so this isn't a little thing. So then this is where Graham links in with if there's about to be sort of some apocalyptic thing, where do you all hide? You can take everyone.
Question.
Okay.
Are there animals down there?
they can have animals down there.
Okay, I was going to say, how do they eat?
As we get into it, there's areas where they found the tops of ashes. It would have been they've cooked stuff in there, and there was chimneys that were opposite to the air duct ones that they said they would have cooked stuff in.
So that's very smart, because you wouldn't think that'd be like, oh, I need to get the smoke out.
Yeah, they've planned all that. So again, advanced civilization.
See, I'd probably be an asshole and not build a funnel for my smoke.
Leave you as the architecture of a building, then, Natasha.
We don't need the way for the fire to get out, and then we'll die of carbon.
I'm not letting you build a house, basically, is where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be an afterthought, and then I'll be like, oh yeah,
I needed that.
Yeah.
If it's too late now,
dead.
You're suffocating in your own little home. Well, if you've got creature comforts, I guess it's not all that painful a death. Right, so it has been examined in parts. So when it was first examined, archaeologists found early Christian artefacts. So based on that, that's when they've dated it from, and that's when they're saying it is. Just because they found Christian artefacts in it does not mean that's when it was created.
They could have just been like, oh, this is mine now.
Yeah.
I found it.
The other ones, it could have already been there, and we're like, we'll just move in here.
Yeah.
So, but obviously the historians are going with, this is who it was created by.
Is it like the Knights Templar or whatever they're called?
I don't know.
I don't know what they did. I can't remember. Did they steal some stuff and like go hide it somewhere? And they might be I'm very tired. I'm thinking.
Well, we'll move on from your point then and carry on with the episode.
That's why the Christian artifacts might be in there, is what I'm trying to explain.
Okay. So the original theory was that it was carved out in the 7th century AD by Christians to hide from Arab raiding parties. Not too far
raiding party.
Raiding parties, yes. Which is not too far-fetched when you look at the time. So basically there was a bit of a war going on. Obviously a lot of Christian people were moving in, and Arab raiding parties were almost seizing the opportunity, like, we'll take all of their riches.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that sort of happened. It wasn't a war, but it was like you kind of have to hide from them because they're going to take you. Oh, what are you doing?
Sorry, the Knights Templar are Catholic. Military order, not Christianity.
Okay.
Or were they? Hold on. One of the most wealthy and popular military orders in Western Christianity. So is that Catholic or Christian?
I don't know the difference. I still, to this day,
I don't know the difference.
Even after the witch trials, I generally don't get what the difference is.
It's Roman Catholic military order. So would they have the Christianity stuff to put in the tip?
God knows.
Never mind. Doesn't matter.
Okay. We've gone off on a tangent. This episode is long enough as it is, Natasha. Right, okay. I'm sorry, listeners. Natasha's being naughty. Right. Okay.
I was just trying to explain why there might be some Christian artifacts in there, and then I got confused with Catholics.
Okay.
It's very easily done.
And now I've lost where I am, Natasha. I've got to find it, and I've got to read through my scrawl of writing. That's terrible.
I'm sorry.
Right, okay. Okay, so so the original theory was that they were carved out in the 7th century AD by Christians who were hiding from Arab raiding parties.
Yes.
Later excavations found artefacts as early as the 8th century BC. So that's a couple of hundred years before the Christians were even there. So
because they didn't exist.
Yeah. So obviously it wasn't built by the Christians. So many cultures have used the tunnels over the centuries.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Because like I said, when you move to a new place, you're obviously going to make use of what's already there. You're not going to be like, I'm going to struggle here and try and build my own structure when there's a perfectly good one there.
Like the lava tunnels on the moon.
Okay, let's see. So there's lots of theories surrounding this, but nothing's actually been proven by science. And there's also been absolutely no carbon dating done. So the date's a complete mystery, which leaves it open to Graham's interpretation of it could have been built much earlier. And I can't disagree with him.
I don't blame him for being like, well, no one's bothered to do it properly. So I'm
claiming it.
Yeah, there you go. He's doing what all these people are doing and claiming it as their own.
So this is it. So then I want to go... Oh, no, I'm going to get this word wrong.
Say it.
No, I can't, because this is another one that I did know. Okay, so this is where I now, going back to the Arab raiding parties, I want to do a little bit on history on the area at the time. So this is a group of people known as the Phrygians, and they're around in the 8th century BC.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have been hiding in terror from an invading army called the Assyrians, and they were notorious for skinning prisoners. So quite scary people.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. They also impaled and burnt children alive.
Oh,
so, like really like casually, like quite nice people.
Vlad the Impaler, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm also thinking that this, hiding underground might be quite clever because it's sort of an open area. It's quite flat and it's not deserts, but it's large sandy areas. So, if you've got a little house, you might be quite noticeable. Hide underground.
Oh, yes.
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 Okay. And you're not going to be that noticeable. So according to accounts, the Assyrians were surprised when they were attacked by Fijians, and their tactics seemed to be much more advanced. The Fijians were using the tunnels as hideouts and unexpectedly attacking the Assyrians as they. So obviously, almost like they'd let them in so far. I don't know if you could hear the thundering of the hooves of the horses, and they go, "Oh, they're at that point. We'll pop out here and attack." It would be a good attack thing. So it's almost like they're sort of suggesting it's an army. Not an army base, but like it's a tactical sort of thing. Okay. Within the tunnels are massive stone wheels that could be moved to seal up passage walls. So they're suggesting it's an old type door. Okay. These rolling doors had a diameter of up to 5 foot and weighed up to half a ton. So not like easy to move.
No.
Okay. But did they really build them for this purpose, or were they already there and they're making use of them? Obviously, I think you know where you're going. Graham's about to suggest that he was earlier. So Graham points out that the rock, though it is strong, is relatively soft, and so an army with chisels could have broken them down. Not very quickly, but they could have got in. So if they saw them, oh wait, they're using a passage to hide, like, all it would take is one person, well, we'll just knock down the door and we can get the whole civilization. So it's an idea. It's clever if it worked, but it has flaws in the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So he doesn't think that it was built by the Fijians, and as a defensive fort, though it was used by them instead, he thinks as a clever way to allow privacy between sections to prevent fires spreading. So basically, a lot of the time when these Assyrians were coming in, they were setting fire to settlements. He thinks they use these stone walls to block out bits of air to stop the fire from spreading, so they could move people to different parts of the passages.
That makes sense.
And them being sent. I think that makes sense. But obviously, ultimately, these tunnels were already there.
Yeah.
Okay. There are no known settlements in this area above ground until the 1830s. So that's it's only just over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been, I don't know how they would have ended up there unless they've already been sort of pushed out from their original settlements somewhere else and they've just sort of ended up there. And is it luckily that they just found that tunnel? I don't know. It's a bit hit and miss, isn't it? So also, the other reason it wouldn't be a very good tactical solution is the fact that if you were hiding from the army could then just seal up the doors from the outside with something else and wait for you to starve to death.
Yeah.
In which case there'd be lots of human remains inside, and they didn't find that. Unless they've been removed by someone else at another point. I don't know.
Scavenger type. Yeah. Okay.
But again, so could the tunnels be older? And this is where Graham's going with it. So could it be them hiding from something else? Now, the oldest chambers
Aliens.
seem to... No. The oldest chambers seem to be designed not for defensive, but for everyday living. There are areas that would have been used for cooking, and there are even chimneys, which is what I mentioned before.
Which I would forget to put in, yes.
Yep. And there was other rooms that were bigger, but then they were split into little sections, so they were suggesting that it would be like stables or for keeping animals. Okay. So there was a winery as well, like little section bits, like, like the little holes cut out. So could you have grapes crushed, but also, because it's much cooler underground, everything would have stayed fresher for longer. So if they were trying to ride out a specific, let's say, a big event that was coming and you're going to be stuck there for months, almost like you've got to hibernate, you need stuff for months, you take all your animals down with you, everything, but also the food, you're going to keep it fresher for longer. Rather than going up a hill and trying to carry it all uphill, dig underground, not only does it keep a thing cooler and fresher, but you're still away from whatever it is that's attacking you from the sky.
So it's basically like a subterranean...
Like a whole civilization.
Yeah. Which some people, if you want to go down that conspiracy theory, people do think there is that below us.
So there we go. So it's a bit obviously like an underground bunker as well.
Yeah.
So was it built as a refuge to preserve life from danger above, which is where Graham's all going there. So if you go back looking then at a certain part of the chamber that they look at, there's little hack marks in the wall which would have been caused by hand axes, and they but based on the cultural layer and the other bits found around it, it goes back as far as the first ice age, which would have been obviously much more cavemen like. So there's parts of it that are very old, so it sort of not contradicts what they're thinking, but it's a bit of an anomaly, and it hasn't been investigated any further, so we don't really know what it is. So 1 mile from Dereninku, archaeologists examining an ancient riverbed found hand axes and tools dating back to 9,500 BC, which is the end of the last ice age.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're saying, could it be linked? Okay, so what makes it remarkable is the fact that Dereninku isn't the only underground city in Cappadocia. Okay, in 2013, construction workers stumbled across another series of tunnels at is it Neversir? Yeah, okay, at Neversir, 17 miles away, and that's even larger than Dereninku. This one had 36 underground. In total, 36 underground cities have been discovered in Cappadocia, and that's counting the ones with multiple levels. If you include the ones with only 2 levels, there are up to 200 that have been discovered.
That's
so
a lot.
far. So this is a mass, like...
Is this still in Turkey?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a part of it. So in this whole area, for some reason, they're building mass underground tunnels. And at the moment, we don't really know why, but I guess Graham's going with the whole there's about to be apocalyptic thing, you've got to hide.
I've never been to Turkey, so I don't know. Is it kind of like a dusty place?
It is a desert. It's not full-on desert like you imagine, like Arabia sort of thing, but it is quite deserty.
So that's one reason to be like underground.
It's cooler as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 miles from Dereninku is Kamaki, and that's an underground city is made up of 8 levels, but is wider than Dereninku, and it could have supported up to 3,500 people. But most surprisingly, on the 3rd level down, there's a tunnel that spreads far into the distance. It's blocked up now, but it's said that it's connected to Kamaki. It connects Kamaki to Dereninku, which is 5 miles away. So that would suggest not only are they building several underground ones, they're actually building connections to each one, so you can travel between. So like lots of little settlements joining up together. So it's still like you've got your own area, like your own town, but you can connect to the others. So at least 6 of the other underground complexes connect to each other. So not all of them, but a number of them do. So does this change the purpose of it being a defensive thing from the army to it being that people have got to live underground for some reason for a substantial amount of time and survive? I think it does. So Graham thinks so, and he thinks that it was highly motivated by something going on in the culture at the time. So religion's oldest myth is a devout religion called Sufism from an ancient culture of Zoroastrianism, and in the text it talks of an underground city just like Dereninku.
Yeah.
So Yima, who's obviously one of the not necessarily a god, but was important at the time, was warned of a fatal winter and was to build an underground shelter and bring only the very best of men and women as well as animals, 2 of every kind. Now, what does that remind you of?
Noah and the whale.
Yes, Natasha, yes. Noah and the whale. Yes,
Noah and Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark, okay. So he also warned to bring stores of seeds of every tree, plant and fruit alike, and that this onset of the winter would be heralded by a serpent in the sky. Okay? I'm thinking comets.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Which would explain, rather than this one just being a flood, would there be a part of the Ice Age where we've also got burning asteroids falling to the ground, similar to what you depict of when the dinosaurs went extinct.
Yeah, and then
you've got to live underground.
Yeah.
And this is where he starts tying in, because obviously it's part of this Ice Age thing. It's not just going to be the ice caps melting, there's going to be several catastrophic events.
Yeah.
He's saying that one part of this, Graham's saying, is it would have been asteroids, which is eventually how the series ends up being labelled as Ancient Apocalypse, because obviously it's a whole continuation of things. This underground city would support that idea. It also would explain where the later stories of this and Noah's Ark have come from, because it was a major catastrophic event. These could be the ones that survived the Ice Age, because they went underground.
That makes sense.
and that all the other structures just got buried.
Yeah.
And that the other people didn't survive. So I think it's quite plausible.
It is.
And that then these people would have come out, and then maybe hunter-gatherers that weren't in these areas and maybe further inland, obviously, even though they've struggled with however now the landscape's been left, it's been left barren, they obviously maybe, let's say, go south. They then come into contact with these that have survived the more advanced. They obviously work together, and that's when what we know is a modern civilization is born. So rather than it being what historians are saying of we just got up after the last ice age and started building civilizations, maybe we had them before and now it's merged.
It's like a lost oh my god, lost thingy. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So yeah, so basically it's a merging of effectively two different types of cultures. Because like when you had like Neanderthal, what were the ones before Neanderthals?
Yeah.
Basically, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Some are just slightly more advanced than the others. I think this is just another version of it.
Yeah, missing link. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what's happened here, which is what effectively Graham is saying has gone on. And I think it's quite plausible, because I don't see how we can all be Neanderthals and then we just suddenly get up and start building civilizations one day.
Like, no, I want a wheel.
Yeah. And also, how, if it was that apocalyptic, the Ice Age, how did we survive?
Yeah.
We must have been intelligent enough to have known to go underground. Or somewhere else.
We
go higher up for the floods and underground for the comets.
Yeah.
And how would we do that? Track the stars and the sun and the moon and, I don't know, have a look at what's going on. Like, oh, there's some big fiery balls in the sky.
So that ball is getting bigger.
It looks quite hot as well. It's getting
bigger.
Quite warm.
Get it? Like, I swear it's getting bigger. We need to, like, check that it's getting bigger.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Balls.
So I think, obviously, Graham at this point is saying he thinks it's strange that all the megaliths, even though they're very far apart and from around the world, that he thinks it would be strange if they weren't connected at all, considering they all seem to have a baseline of similar things.
Yeah.
Or at least they've been initially created by someone and then they've travelled around the world and shared their stories, and these structures have come from what that person has said, which I think is plausible. So then this then brings you on to what was the last episode, and obviously at the beginning... it briefly mentions prehistoric America and then goes back to the Younger Dryas, and this first half is a bit more in detail about that. So this basically goes down to what was there before the Younger Dryas, okay, in terms of prehistoric America. So they're looking at, was there evidence of an apocalypse? So not just a flood, but comets flying from the sky. I was going to say from the ground, from the sky. Okay. So in northwestern America, there's something called the channeled scablands. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Don't think so.
No. Okay. So it's an apocalyptic landscape covering 2,000 square miles.
Oh, is this where all like the meteorites hit?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's giant scars, obviously, in the rock where the world's like been split up. But it effectively looks like, it almost does look like you're landing on the moon or something. It's basically like giant potholes. Is probably a very basic way of describing it. But it also has epic waterfalls. So, but these are obviously dry falls, which would be fossilised waterfalls. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and these things are like absolutely enormous. Like, they're not a piddly little streamy thing. These things are
what did
unbelievable.
You call it?
The channeled scablands. And it's a really vast area.
I'm Googling. You can continue.
Okay. So then, some of these are 50 miles long and 3 miles wide and hundreds of feet deep. So, like I said, very big. So a geologist believed, that Graham speaks to in this episode, believes that it was caused by heavy flooding that took place sometime in the last ice age. And the area looks sort of like it's been torn apart is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Now, prior to flooding, there was miles of icelands holding enough water to fill oceans. So, obviously, before that water would have flooded, so before the last ice age, it would have been much colder. It would have been like, like what Antarctica and that basically is now. That's what it would have been. And it would have been part of the ice sheet. So freshwater lakes formed like glaciers, like Lake Missoula, and they would have contained as much water as modern lakes there's the modern Lake Erie, which I quite liked because that name was quite cool, and Ontario combined, covering most of what today is northwestern Montana. So very vast area. So the current theory is that Lake Missoula was blocked by a natural ice dam that then burst, causing water to flood west. And to account for all the scarring on the landscape, geologists theorise that the ice dams then refroze and reformed and burst again and again, causing several floods over thousands of years, creating the Scablands. So it wasn't just one; it just kept freezing. It got a bit colder again, almost like when you seasons. But it did that, and they theorise that there's been between 80 to 90 floodings.
Yeah, it's very interesting to look at it. It's kind of like the Grand Canyon, but a bit more mossy, and then obviously there's like giant potholes. So where it looks, okay, it's very interesting.
It was a really bizarre area to look at when they brought it into the thing, but I think it feeds in nicely to the whole apocalyptic area sort of. Yeah,
because like where it's located is very strange. Like Washington State, very interesting area. Okay. Yep.
So some believe it was not the work of thousands of years, but instead a singular deluge lasting just a few weeks, so a major catastrophic event. And then it wasn't just water mixing with crashing ice. And then it wasn't just water, but in fact water mixing with cracking icebergs, ripping land apart and pulling down rocks, completely changing the landscape, which I also think is plausible. Flood waters would then gouge an immense waterfall into the sides because of the sheer pressure, and the size of more than 10 Niagara Falls put together. So this thing is massive. It would be 2.5 times taller, 7 times the width, and 3,000 times more powerful. So then they go on to something called the Camas Prairie, and it sort of ripples in the landscape, similar to those that you'd find on the beach. You know when the tide goes out and the sand goes a bit ripply?
Yeah.
So each time it comes in and it goes back out, it leaves a mark.
Yeah.
So these are between 30 and 50 feet long ripples, and which would suggest that large amounts of water sat on the landscape and then withdrew and then came back out. So depending on who you want to look at, rather than it being a singular event, that one would suggest something over a slight more period of time.
Yeah.
Or could you say it just gradually went further and further out? It could have been a catastrophic event which caused initial flooding, but it took a long time for it to eventually go away. Depending on how you want to look at it, it could fit either of those theories, if you like. So 1,200 miles south in the US-Mexico border, a place called Murray Springs. Okay, so in 2007, an area of exposed earth was discovered to contain something called black mat. Now, that is a layer, and it represents the extinction layer. So it's basically anything that was below where you would find like mammoth bones and saber tooth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And within it, they found the bones relating to American horses, camels, dire wolves, and saber-toothed cats.
Ooh.
Which, so obviously they're more related to a modern civilization.
Yeah.
But what were they doing mixed in with that? But also those animals would have quite often been put together because you would have farmed them together, which would support Graham's idea of a lost civilization, because they were already farming and doing things together, which would explain why these particular animals were all found together. So it supports that, basically. So far, not a single one of these has ever been found above that layer. There was also evidence of extinction of human beings, so obviously human bones found in there. So we already knew people were around before the last ice age, but the fact that there's both human and certain types of animals together might support a civilization.
Yeah.
Okay. So chemical analysis of the black mat was then done, and they found melted glass spherules, so a clue to high temperature event happened. So it's not, basically, it's where the temperatures really rise. It's not enough to completely burn the earth away, but it produces other chemicals that are a bit gluey. Like, you know when you melt glass and it goes to the funny, it's not liquid, but like a molten thing. They found chemical elements of that within this black mat layer. So that would suggest at that period in time when these other things were going to be extinct, there was a massive heat up of the Earth, which would support comets or asteroids falling from the sky, hence the apocalyptic event.
Yep.
Okay, which could also, if you want to say the floods were either just before or at a similar time, that massive rise in temperatures might cause those massive ice plains to fall apart.
Yep.
Okay. So there was also a peak in plutonium and iridium, which is not something that's commonly found on this planet. Okay. So the only thing that can produce that is some sort of cosmic impact, which would suggest it was elements of broken up asteroid or a comet, which again supports the theory of an apocalyptic event.
Yeah.
Okay. So could this event have happened at the end of the Younger Dryas and happened well before... Sorry. So could it have happened at the end of the Younger Dryas? So we've had the floods first. You could either have had the floods first or at the same time. Or this catastrophic event of the comets and the asteroids could have caused the mass flooding. Obviously, we know it's not impossible for the asteroids and comets to hit because we had it before with the dinosaurs. So it's not plausible. So the damage caused when the dinosaurs were obviously wiped out is still visible in some parts of the Earth today, and similar layers were found at Murray Springs. So those ones in the black mat were similar to those at the layers found at the time the dinosaurs went extinct. So that then supports the theory of it was another similar event. Okay. So it was after that discovery at Murray Springs that researchers set up an investigation to see if it was visible anywhere else, and it was all across the world in certain different places. So it's not just impacted that area, it's impacted everywhere. So currently black mat sites have been found across North America, including California and Michigan and New Jersey, but also in Belgium, Syria, and lots of impact dates, and they all roughly date back to 12,800 years ago, which was actually at the beginning of the last ice age. So these are obviously, it's a suggestion of a major event. It's happening about the time, but at the same time, if you want to go back to some of these megaliths, they also date back to this time. But how did they get built that early unless someone a bit more advanced was building them? That's effectively what this event is building up to. And then you've got places like Derrininku. Have these events started to happen and everyone's thought we must go underground because they're already more advanced than what we currently believe them to be? Have they dug out these hideouts and think we'll ride it out? It'll only last for so long.
Yeah, possibly.
They might have already discovered the whole thing about the dinosaurs and we just don't know about it.
True. Maybe some of them were even around, if we want to argue that.
There you go. Like, we don't know.
Descendants of the people.
Yeah. So it would also explain the sudden increase in the water. Obviously, if the comet had hit the ice caps and the ice sheets, that would force the water and ice fragments south, and it would also cause a sudden mass flood. You have that on a massive scale all around the world. Then, like all the other places like Malta and the very first one in Indonesia, those areas, instead of being mainland, they're now becoming islands. Okay, so basically, Graham is putting forward from the end of this whole series that he believes there was a brief but intense cosmic storm bringing debris to Earth, causing a major event. In their theory, they don't think that the Earth was hit by a full comet, rather debris and fragments from one which shattered and littered the entire Earth, hence there being lots of separate impaction sites. These would then have released water vapour and clouds of dust, causing temperatures to plunge. Blocks sun. I was like sin, and that's sun. Okay, so obviously as these have hit the ground, they would have caused massive cloud plumes, but like on a massive scale. We're not just talking about a little bit of a cloudy day. It would have obviously sent temperatures plummeting, which could account for a second bit of an ice age, because the temperatures are plummeting. The sun is now blocked, so it can't heat up as we would normally. So it goes from being a burning thing to now it's gone so cold because we've locked the sun out. However, that was met with some cynicism because they think that the comet came from a torrid meteor stream, which is a patch of sky which the Earth passes through twice a year in late June and late October. So weirdly, that for me coincides with like the solstices, although it's slightly out. But they're basically saying like, no, it wouldn't have lasted that long. So his theory isn't plausible based solely on that. I don't really I don't get why that's the only thing like knocking it out. So, but however, if that did happen, when the way they sort of end the episode is basically Graham ties it all up and he goes, it would explain why all these things are linked with stuff to do with the sky, because this catastrophic event has happened. They've now suddenly become obsessed with the skies, or they already were obsessed with skies. Maybe we'd had previous ones before. Obviously, this ice age would have happened over a period of time. So let's say the beginning of the last ice age is when civilization was advanced enough that they could start building structures and start tracking the skies. More apocalyptic events keep happening in certain areas, so they're tracking it.
Yeah.
And this is where their obsession with astrology and all the skies happen, is because they're trying to track these things to prevent it. Then at the end of the last ice age, after the flooding, we lose a lot of people, or a large percentage of the population. But those that do survive obviously then go into writings and like, we must warn people not to do this because this will happen again, or this is what we need to look out for.
Yeah.
And this is where religious stories and myths come from. These people then mix with Neanderthals that wouldn't have been part of these civilizations at the beginning of the ice age.
Yeah.
They then all come together, and this is when the modern human civilization was developed after the end of the ice age. So rather than it being the first civilization, it was the modern civilization, is basically Graham's theory. And
Makes
he thinks
sense.
there was an ancient civilization. And that's basically how the series ends. And I think based on everything that he sort of looked at and the dating, yes, there's nothing scientific or factually, like, you can't completely prove it. But they also can't, like, no one's disproved it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I think, like, why is no one looking at it? Like, it'd be so interesting for people to go and have a look at it, because I think I don't think what he's saying, I think it makes sense. I don't think it's too far-fetched.
No.
Like, it's not like I said, he's coming up with the whole alien conspiracy. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything he said, I know there could have been bits that he's missed out because it contradicts what he wants to say. But on a whole, I think it's quite plausible. I don't think it's too far-fetched.
It does. It's plausible. I see where he's coming from.
Yeah, and I do think it was a mixture. I don't think it was a single event. I don't think it was just a flood or just astral. I think it was a period. And I said, these ice ages last a long time. And you could, in part, it's like now, effectively, it's the same as climate change today, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're still living in it. We're just suffering in different areas with different things, and we're just trying to tackle problems. Maybe that's what they were doing all those years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Just on a different scale. And that's why we've seen these different type of megaliths. The one, they're trying to track different things, but also then these ones in Derininku where they've got an underground civilization was at a time when asteroids and comets hit, and it was like, we must go underground and take everything with us to preserve life. And then as an outcome from that, when everyone survived, that's become the story, like things with Noah's Ark, because they know that that's what helps people survive. It's not a made up story, it's based off something that actually happened.
Well, yeah.
But how do you prove it? It's like something that happened 100 years ago. You could meet someone, well, you're not going to because they'll be dead, but they could say, well, this happened, but no history books have recorded it. We might take it as, oh, well, it's a tale they're telling us, it's a moral of the story. But actually it did happen, we just didn't witness it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what some historical things, like folklore, I think some of it must come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's like, well, why did you come up with it?
Yeah, but I do think it holds a lot of base. Obviously, a lot of these, obviously the myths aren't necessary. Some of them are religious based, but not all of them.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if this is where a lot of religions have stemmed from, was this single event.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite plausible. You've got to base it off something.
It is.
And it's better to base it off something that actually happened. It's easier to create a story, if you like, based off something that happened. Because what do you do even as a fiction writer? You base it off reality.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they start religions based off this particular event? It's almost, like I said, it's like a moral of the story, like you must do this or
this will happen. Yeah.
And we know it all happened because
it happened before.
Yeah. But I felt for him, especially all the links with like the serpents and the stars, it was just so many reoccurring of the same things. And yes, they were on opposite sides of the world, but I don't think it wasn't plausible to say that those people wouldn't have travelled at the time. They just would have had to been much more advanced than what historians like to believe, because at this point they literally have them as little cavemen and that's it. But I think they were more than likely probably quite a bit more advanced. I think we still had Neanderthal and cavemen like people. Like now you've got people of different intellects. Why can't you?
Exactly.
But also, and this is the thing when they were like, oh no, this wouldn't happen. Do we not still have indigenous tribes in places now? They haven't brought into the whole modern technology thing.
Exactly.
So if they can still survive,
I
why
think
is it not
it's
plausible all those years ago?
I think it's because it's an ignorance. Oh, like they didn't know any better, but we do. No.
It's in a weird way, it's like history repeating itself.
Yeah, exactly. This is why it's like when it is ancient aliens. It's like you're just because they're not alive now.
Yeah.
You think that they're not capable of what they clearly were capable of.
Yeah. And that's it. Like I said, I think he's got a pretty valid point.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder if they go back, like, how far did it go back? Like, I want them to uncover it and discover it, and then they find out that, I don't know, like 1 billion years ago, we were actually still alive then. You know, when they do, like, life's going to end, or, like, the sun's going to burn us in 100 years or 200 years or something. I'm like, if they've been saying that for if they've been saying that for the last billion years, and then it hasn't, and actually been around for a hell of a lot longer than we've ever realised.
Well, I think we're good at looking out, meaning like we're good at looking like when the Big Bang started. We're good at looking at that. We're not good at looking at like everything on Earth because we can document it more if we look out.
Yeah.
Than we are here.
The weird thing I always remember at school, and I always used to get really confused with the timelines of things, because I always thought there was a Big Bang, the dinosaurs, then the Egyptians. To me, that's how it was explained to me at school. Yeah. And there was nothing in between. What they fail to mention is how many years there was between each of those events.
Yeah.
And you just think, oh, like, that's the order. Like, because they've put it in that order, that's just what happened. Like, yeah, we had...
Hold on, I'm going to Google this, like, Cleopatra and woolly mammoth. I swear it was a thing. Like, time-wise, they were at the same time. And I was like, wait, but they're, like, in the Ice Age.
But maybe there were, if there was another Cleopatra in an ancient civilization.
Maybe.
So maybe they're not wrong. Maybe there was another Cleopatra.
Maybe.
And they've just found the evidence of an ancient civilization, and they've just, like, lumped it in. They're like, oh, no, it can't be for that time.
17 facts that sound fake but are true. Let's see.
Right, okay.
Let me find the Cleopatra one. This is why we can edit. Oh, okay.
You told a lie.
Cleopatra lived closer in time to the building of the first Pizza Hut than the building of the pyramids.
Oh, okay.
So this is why I might get confused with the...
You're spreading misinformation, Natasha.
And on that note, the woolly mammoth still roamed the earth while the pyramids were being built. That's the link that was connected. Okay. So, yeah, okay, that's why I remembered woolly mammoth and Cleopatra. They were closely...
And like I said, if you want to support the whole ancient civilization, they definitely were, because woolly mammoths were around with a much more advanced civilization. So maybe there was another Cleopatra. It was just an earlier Cleopatra, and she had a woolly mammoth as a pet.
The last woolly mammoth died as late as 1650 BC.
Yeah.
By this time, the Egyptian Empire was already extremely advanced and building pyramids.
Yes.
That's why I knew there was like a link.
Well, it'd be like the people, like, even though most things when it's in, it was probably like the last one or something like that. Last two.
Yeah.
And it was 2 boys, so they couldn't make babies.
But I knew there was a like connection between like Cleopatra and the pyramids.
Because you always think of woolly mammoths like there's only one type, but there's also so many different types of woolly mammoths. Because that's effectively where elephants have come from.
Yeah.
So I want to think of, in between, when I think of woolly mammoth, I always think of the heffalump from Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, or Ice Age with the little baby peaches.
I want a little heffalump. I mean, they're not little, are they? They're absolutely fucking massive. But
they are huge.
I don't think we could keep one in the garden.
No.
But yes, so that is the part 2 of this megaliths mega episode.
It is mega because they're both equally like 1 hour and a half.
Probably we're going to be. But I didn't know, I couldn't make it any shorter. I couldn't have left any of those bits out. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made it as plausible. I would have just been like, yeah, there's loads of temples that all have the same symbol. And he's saying that that represents that they were from a long time ago.
The end.
So I kind of had to go into each place. Like, I literally, because I did cut a couple out, like I briefly mentioned them, like in nowhere near as much detail, because they were almost identical to another one. And I think so I just picked out the key ones in each episode. So like I said, if you're really interested in this, and like either you've struggled with my explanation, or you want more of a visual, then I'd recommend going to listen to the episode. The series on Netflix. It was called Ancient Apocalypse. And there is 8 episodes. I think they're roughly half an hour each. So I did binge watch it in one go purely because I needed to write this episode. But I did enjoy it, and I thought it was quite valuable what he had to say.
It is.
Like I said at the beginning of episode 1, you have got to accept that not everything he said in here might be factually correct. He might have distorted parts because he wants it to fit his theories. But on a whole, I don't think it's too far.
No, it's not too far-fetched. No, it's
and
not.
It'd be interesting to see some of the things. Maybe get interested a bit more. I don't know if the internet can do one of the things, you know, where like it blows everything up and like it almost forces them that they've got to go and have a look now because everyone's mentioned this thing and someone's like, yeah, we're going to have to, even if they disproved him. Do you know what I mean? I actually want to know the answer. I don't want it to be like, yeah, we've got this, but we don't know because we haven't looked.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
it's
can't
like,
bother.
to me, it's a pathetic excuse.
Yeah.
Look, okay, it needs funding and you've got to do all these careful testing. I know it's not simple as you just go and they scrape a bit of sand and then like, yeah, that's from 12,000 years ago. There's a lot more to it than that. But surely somewhere someone has the money to do that.
Ask a billionaire.
Yeah. Maybe we should set up a fund, like maybe Little Old Earth should start it off somewhere. Do you know any billionaires? I'll have to Google that and then
Can
just
we have a
email
billion?
them all. Yeah, I'll just email them all. Like, yeah, I've got a bit of a project I want to do. Would you mind sending me a few pennies to get on with that? And like, if it turns out really good, oh, this is how you put them up. You go, we'll credit you for it if it for
Bezos.
discovering it. Yeah. So there you go. Maybe that's the way forward.
We just have to lure in some billionaires.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sure that'll be easy to do.
Ah, yes.
But yeah, so no, thank you to Eves for recommending this series for us to have a little look at, and hopefully everyone has enjoyed it. And if anyone else has something that they wanted to look at, whether it be an individual little case or a whole series, we're obviously quite open to doing that. So if you want to do that, feel free to message us, and in a minute we'll explain how you can get in contact with us if you want to. But in the meantime,
keep creeping
and we'll keep digging.
Thank you for listening to today's episode.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, then maybe you'd like to either contact us about our episode. You can find us on Instagram under the Graveyard Girls podcast. We think at least write pod in, and then it's
one of them. It's definitely the Graveyard Girls pod on TikTok.
Yes. But yeah, if you head over to that, then obviously we make posts related to each episode, so if you want to drop something in the comments there, or you could send us a direct message if you wanted to. You can also email us through our Instagram, but if you want to go old school and open up your actual emails, you can email us on
the Graveyard Girls pod at gmail.com.
Alternatively, if that's not the way you want to go, you can find us on our website, which is also linked on our Instagram,
which is thegraveyardgirls.co.uk, because we couldn't afford .com.
Yes. On there you can send us messages through that, either direct messages. I think you can email us through that as well.
You can. You can subscribe on there so you could get updates if we
do them.
But most of the updates come from Instagram, so just check that out. But also on the website we have our own shop where you can get merch. More stuff is coming
very soon. And yeah, I think you can listen to that, and then have we linked in our Patreon on there as well? Yes,
Patreon, there's a link on there for Patreon. Or alternatively, you can go to Patreon directly and look for the Graveyard Girls Graveyard Girls podcast, and you could subscribe where you can. There's a couple of different tiers at the minute.
Yeah, they all vary. The very first one doesn't unlock anything. That's purely support for the show. But any tiers after that, any of the higher ones, I think the next one up is like £3.
Yeah.
That starts unlocking bonus episodes. And as we go along, we'll add extra little goodies in, like T-shirts. And then we're going to add more as we go along. We just got to organise our tiers a bit better now that we're adding new content. So we want to make some more a bit relevant to that and sort of expand on what we've already got. So, hopefully you want to come and join us over there. There's a lot more episodes over there. The bonus episodes include things like I suppose, like little mini history episodes.
Mini history,
some more. There is some more true crime on there.
True crime
and mysteries.
The rest of the witch trial season,
is on there, and
it's anything that like we feel is It's
interesting.
it is interesting. That wouldn't fit in the normal
In
podcast.
the mainstream one.
Yeah.
So a lot of our main episodes as well, they're linking quite nicely. We've got little sub-series up on Patreon. So if you liked the main episodes, you can go and have a little look at those. Because like for this, like this is a serial killer one. Oh no. This is... Forget that.
We're tired. We do have another podcast if you could be so kind to check out.
Yes, very different from this. It's called Hidden in the Hollows.
It's scripted.
Yeah, and it's very...
It's acted.
It's terrible acting.
Loosely by us. But it's something... It was a thing we wanted to test out.
Yeah. So yeah, if you search for that, it is done by us, but it's not under the Graveyard Girl. So if you search for Hidden in the Hollows.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all of our little extra bits.
I think so.
So yeah, hopefully you join us again for another episode.
Yes, join us every week, every Wednesday.
And Patreon on Thursday.
Yes. And Hidden in the
Hollows on a Friday. We're so good at this. How are we ending it?
Just like that.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye-bye.